Ladies and gentlemen, this is UX and this is 40k Lord, the Death Korps of Krieg by the channel Arch, whatever. Yeah, so I already did the first part of this, first 18 minutes of this, and so far what I've gathered is the Krieg got, so rich and comfortable at a point, I guess, that, they started to think maybe we should be better off without the Imperium. Which doesn't work in the Empire, obviously. When you're under an Empire, you can't think like that without Empire literally retaliating. I can't say that, Krieg didn't have their reasons, because let's be honest, Imperium is a bit of, I don't know how to say this, more of a, they tend to strong arm people, let's just say. So Krieg is not completely wrong there, but in the end, it's an Empire. Empire, demands things from you. It is the world of Warhammer, right? The grim dark world. And Krieg's intention were not for their people, but for, people in power. They just wanted more money and more riches, I guess. So the Krieg, their intention were not that great either. That turned into a massive war, a nuclear winter, basically. Everybody nuke shit, and planet is basically a wasteland now. Obviously, Imperium won't care about that now, I guess. So in the end, whatever Krieg wanted, it became obsolete now because they destroyed their planet. They were, drowning in riches, basically. That's how they, all these thoughts got into their head. Maybe we should do this all by ourselves. More money. But now what they had, they don't even have that because it's all a wasteland now. And I know I said, why not try peace treaty or whatever? When somebody said in the comment, you do realize that this is Imperium we're talking about. They don't, they don't deal with the traitors much. I understand that. But, I don't know, trying something like that is better than actually, going to, continuing the war. But I know that's, useless. Imperium is so big. Why would they cave in? Why would they say that, let's do the peace treaty? They would say, I'm going to kill you now, regardless of what. That kind of makes sense. All right, let's watch it. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more. And yeah, I've created a new Twitter account for this channel because YouTube just gives 3 notifications per day, and even not that sometimes. And I upload more than 3 videos every day. So I'll be uploading, I'll be posting, tweeting. I'll be tweeting more and more links of the video that I react, so it's easier for you to find, I guess. Because YouTube is definitely not sending notifications. So yeah, you'll know it by Twitter, I guess. Because I've noticed that, sometimes certain type of video upload and notification don't get sent. People, the people don't watch that video a lot. That video doesn't get much view. And I sometimes think that people probably don't like that type of video. But then again, second part of that video I upload next time and notification does go out, then that, fair amount of people watches that. So I get it is notification thing. So, just, follow me on Twitter or whatever that is. And, you'll know when I upload the next reaction video, I guess. Alright, let's watch it.
And that military had been at war for 500 years in some of the most hellish conditions imaginable. And the Imperium does always need soldiers. The Adeptus Administratum levied upon Krieg the highest manpower tithe possible. And so, officially, the Death Korps of Krieg was born, although unofficially, they'd called themselves that already for quite a while during their...
Okay, so last time he was talking about, when I stopped this video, he was talking about that because of all this war of 500 years, the condition bred a certain type of people, which is calling Death Korps of Krieg, which are kind of, really strong militarized type of people. Because 500 years, your civilized tend to, I guess, become more militarized and warlike, or change to whatever you were doing, which was war. That's what he was talking about, and it makes sense. 500 years is a long time. Civilizations change in 500 years. Hell, people's physicalities change. Because let's be honest, in the last 500 years, I guess people got more taller or something, because people are getting taller and taller or something like that. It used to be, 2000 years ago, people used to be really tiny. Not really, but really, small. So 500 years ago, people's heights were different, people were different, their way of thinking was different. So 500 years is a long time.
A lengthy civil war. But the Administratum is not completely without heart. Just mostly. And so they decided that at the very least they should let Krieg start out a little slow. Their society was in ruins. Well, Hell, even that would be considered a very charitable interpretation of Krieg's current situation, and so they wanted to give them a little bit of time to gather themselves up, to start rebuilding a little bit. And so, for starters, the Adeptus Administratum requested that the Departamento Munitorum request a single regiment of Imperial Guard to be raised. The officials on Krieg responded by stating that they had already raised, trained, organized, and equipped 20 regiments for immediate deployment. It was also added in a side note that every single one of the commanders of these 20 regiments are requested to be posted in the most hazardous battle zones that the Departamento Munitorum could find for them.
See, I really like this Death Korps of Krieg and Krieg-related shit because of the nuclear winter thing. I'm a massive Fallout fan, obviously. And the mask, the nuclear post-apocalyptic setting, they're asking Imperium to send them into the worst conditioned places because that's what they're, great at. I already have a soft spot for Krieg now because of that fact.
Now, I consider myself a man of a considerable vocabulary. I flatter myself by supposing that I have a modicum of talent when it comes to painting pictures with words, but even I fall, well, and truly short of the necessary verbiage required to even begin to describe the sheer size, lust, and longing of the Adeptus Administratum's boner upon receiving this reply. But before one allows the vagaries of Winkyhood to lead one astray, these new regiments had to be tested. It was, of course, entirely possible that the men of Krieg could talk the talk, but could they walk the irradiated walk? It turns out that they could. Beyond the wildest expectations, in fact, of the Departamento Munitorum. It turned out that 500 years of warfare had not only bred extraordinarily tough troops with a disregard for personal danger and death that bordered upon the insane, they had also developed an absolutely gargantuan armaments industry deep beneath the ground of their irradiated planet. Krieg was a package deal. Not only could it train and organize extraordinarily tough formations of fighting men, they could arm them as well. So
Imperium, basically by going to war with the Krieg, in turn created a situation and molded certain type of people as a great asset. Because by doing this kind of a war, nuclear winter, they were preparing for war for 500 years. So of course they have equipment and everything, war type, right? Everybody in their society has mentality of war, which is perfect for Imperium. Because let's be honest, there's only war now, as far as Imperium is concerned.
Hearing this, the Departamento Munitorum immediately requested that the Adeptus Administratum increase the tithes leveled upon Krieg and turn it into a perfect war world. Additionally, they also lobbied for the introduction of so-called Vita womb birthing technology to be granted to the officials on Krieg. And this was a very, very big thing indeed. The technology of Vita wombs is controversial, shall we say.
What is it?
In an Imperium that values the flesh, the humanity of its subjects more than anything, and in fact that views any form of artificial intelligence to be naturally inclined to wipe out any form of life, having people born entirely from artificial wombs, well, that smacks of, well, tech heresy, honestly.
Yeah, what I love about this is the Imperium, the way they see that somebody born from artificial womb, so artificial intelligence and all that kind of technology. Anybody who's not completely flesh, just the Imperium feels weird. But at the same time, Mechanicus, those people have the literally opposite mentality. They want themselves to I guess upgrade themselves completely by all this cybernetics and shit, because that's what the thing is required by their god or something, right? So, the symbiosis of these two, Imperium and Mechanicus, these two basically, it's just one of the weirdest things to see, right? But it kind of makes sense because they need each other, let's just say.
But clearly, the Death Korps soldiers have not suffered any ill effect whatsoever. They remain amongst the most loyal, dedicated, and bloody-minded stubborn of all of the Imperium servants. In fact, when they became available in larger numbers to Imperial commanders, many stalemates that had lasted for decades were broken. Scenarios that would either require the mass expenditure of penal legion troops or the deployment of elite formations like the Adeptus Astartes or the Tempestus stormtroopers were now broken, using nothing but blood, grit, and the sheer determination of the core. The writing on the wall was clear indeed. Krieg's future had been decided. Eventually, Krieg was turned into an official Departamento Munitorum war world. This enforced the highest possible level of humanitarian ties upon the planet and also gave it access to the Departamento Munitorum's vast resources. Material started flowing into Krieg at an unprecedented rate, and its output of men and material skyrocketed. To the point that these days, Krieg does not raise Imperial Guard regiments. Krieg raises armies. Now, of course, it wasn't entirely perfect, pretty goddamn close as far as the Munitorum was concerned, but they needed to add in one minor change, that being the Commissariat. Now, granted, the Krieg Death Korps had never failed, not once, and their planet, despite being subjected to some of the harshest regulation in the Imperium, never batted so much as an eyelash at it. Yet, the Departamento Munitorum almost felt like this was just a little bit too good to be true.
Alright, so let me get this straight. This is more like a suicide squad, right? So whenever the conditions are like, unachievable, they send off people, these Krieg squads who are really die hard, let's just say, who doesn't care about dying, right? Who basically, is, gritty and everything like he said. So this is like, hardcore suicide squad equivalent in Warhammer, I guess. Where, the impossible, conditions are there, they're sending people from Krieg.
Undoubtedly, many a commissar assigned to the Death Korps figured to themselves that they got really unlucky. Usually, a commissar is required to encourage the formations they're attached to go beyond their duties, to sacrifice in the name of the Emperor. A Death Korps of Krieg commissar needs to instead try and keep them from sacrificing themselves unnecessarily.
That's awesome.
This rather unusual situation means that in the Death Korps, commissars are less political officers and more tactical advisors, trying to rein in the worst excesses of their attached regiments. Death Korps commissars also tend to have a remarkably high rate of casualties. It turns out that if you put somebody whose primary duty is to inspire loyalty and zeal in people, and then getting massively out-zealed by the regular guardsmen they're supposed to be inspiring, that tends to give the commissars a bit of an inferiority complex, leading them to commit greater and even more insane deeds of self-sacrifice and zeal than even the average Krieg's guardsman, in order to try and set some kind of example to them.
Oh man, imagine being in that position, like, I need to be more than these people? How the fuck am I gonna do that? Of no shit, they have way higher casualty rate. I mean, that is one impossible position. Anybody who find themselves in that position, like, oh god damn it. These people are already too extreme. How am I supposed to be more extreme than that?
Another vital role of a commissar entrenched with a Death Korps regiment is diplomacy. Whilst generally speaking, there is always a certain degree of friction expected whenever you place two Imperial Guard regiments from different worlds beside one another, the Death Korps is particularly antagonistic, shall we say. There are very few things about them that don't seem specifically designed to piss off regular people. One, they barely ever take their gas masks off, as they are trained to consider them a second skin. Wearing them at all times isn't technically required, but it is encouraged. Secondly, they are all raised from birth to believe in the cult of sacrifice. Essentially, this is the idea that nothing they could sacrifice for the Emperor could ever possibly be too much, or hell, even enough, really.
What?
You can imagine just how dour a bunch of people the Death Korps are, considering that they have been bombarded with this since their very birth, and considering they've also survived training, in which the casualty rate, even for Krieg natives, is considered a bit appalling. Yeah, they're not exactly the life of the party, to put it mildly. To just add the final little cherry on top, they also nurture a strong disdain to anyone that isn't them. They view basically 96% of the rest of the galaxy as soft weaklings, and, well, in comparison, they certainly do have a point.
Yeah.
Basically, if you are not the most rabid form of Emperor botherer, they will consider you to not be anywhere near pious enough, and they will...
Oh my God! So Krieg basically, Krieg and their leaders basically went from revolting against the Emperor, in the end turned into a massive war that lasted 5 centuries, nuclear winter and a worse condition, and in turn they felt so much guilty that now their whole society and social thing is basically to do anything. And do anything for the Emperor, right? And no sacrifice is smaller for the Emperor, basically. And by that, they are one of the most hardcore people there are. And anybody who's not like that, they see them as soft and, I guess, overall weak, I guess. That is something, and they always wear their gas mask, because why not? Already flying the banner of Krieg is not enough to terrify people. Like, holy shit, these are those mentalists. No. They have to walk around with mask to give off that kind of a psychological effect. Like, holy shit, what is this? Because look at that, everybody walking around. And if you have soldiers coming towards you wearing masks where there is no condition that require a mask, you would be like, oh, hell no.
I will tell you so. To your face. Loudly and repeatedly. This means that wherever possible, Death Korps regiments should be deployed alongside other Death Korps regiments, which, fortuitously, considering the sheer volume of regiments Krieg produces, is quite often entirely possible. Or, alternatively, they should be placed alongside some other band of religious fanatics. They get along famously well with Maccabean Janissaries, for example, or other regiments who are overly fond of strict discipline, like, for example, the Mordian Iron Guard. And now that we've just touched upon the Cult of Sacrifice a little bit, it's time to talk about it, the Cult of Sacrifice, and the training for the Death Korps. Firstly, what is the Cult of Sacrifice? Well, it is the idea, as mentioned, that no sacrifice is too great. This is hammered into every single child on Krieg from the very moment they are born. They are told that the great sacrifice made by their forefathers during the nuclear cleansing of their world initiated by Colonel Jurgen was the first great sacrifice.
Nuclear cleansing?
To make up for the atrocities committed by the ruling Council of Autarchs, who have been turned into some kind of combination of Satan, Beelzebub, Lucifer, and Hitler. And yes, I know several of those are basically the same thing, but I'm just trying to illustrate just how thick they smeared it on when it comes to the Council of Autarchs.
Oh shit, so basically, everybody who revolted against the Emperor, those people, they basically vilified them in this culture, right? And they see the nuclear winter as the cleansing period, where, the new Krieg was reborn or something, right? And now everybody's just, sacrifice to the Emperor is the greatest thing you can do, right? And from the day one, dying is nothing, right? It's just great for the Emperor and things like that. The culture is completely changed.
They are literally the worst thing to have ever happened ever. In fact, your average Krieg's guardsman, if asked, would probably have to vex lyrically about whether or not Horus was really quite as bad as the High Council. And since Krieg was the planet who birthed such an absolute atrocity, there is quite simply no limit to the amount of sacrifice that Krieg should be expected to provide in the Emperor's service.
Since Horus is the most hated whatever, in the Imperium, saying that Horus was not as bad as these other people, isn't that itself is heresy? When these people talk about that I'll do anything for the Emperor, at the same times, the guy who basically fuck up the Emperor and, made him that he can't even walk and slowly dying, that guy is not as bad as those other people that they were dealing with. Isn't that itself is heresy? And it's weird a bit. They're talking about sacrificing themselves for the emperor, and now they're basically, I don't know, making emperor look weak by saying that the guy who put him there is not as bad as, I don't know.
And mind you, this is not strictly limited to martial sacrifice. It also involves the quote-unquote civilian population, although there isn't really anyone who could be considered a civilian on Krieg, or
Seriously?
at the very least, not in the way that we would normally use the word.
Yeah, what are the
You
cooks?
see, the entirety of Krieg society is focused around nothing else but churning out as many guardsmen, as many guns, as many artillery pieces, as many tanks as it is possible. This means that essentially the entire population is engaged in warfare in one way or the other.
It's a
All
soldier
the fit
factory.
menfolk, and indeed even the non-fit ones, are pretty much universally recruited into the Death Korps of Krieg. Now, of course, there are always the occasional exceptions here and there, but they are few and far between. Meanwhile, the female part of the population, along with the children, mind you, are pretty much all working in the factories. As you can probably imagine, there's not much of a childhood period at all on Krieg. You're working in the factories in one way or another pretty much as soon as you're able to walk on your own. For the
I sometimes wonder that, understand soldiers, right? I mean, we have soldiers who are basically common people who are trained for warfare, but their morality, their way of thinking, you can at least understand that, sure. How do you supposed to process somebody who come out of places like this, Krieg? But there is no normal way of life. From the day one that you're born, you were bred to, I guess, sacrifice yourself to, in the extreme conditions. What would be like to, I guess, sit with them and talk, just normal talk? They would seem like one of the most psychotic and, some weird people that you wouldn't even want to sit around with. Because their normal thoughts, their common thoughts, talks and everything would be so weird. Because, they're brainwashed, I guess is a way of saying, from the day one, from they were born, right? They only think about wars and shit, right? There is no room for anything else. Children even, I guess, slave away to make things because that is what they are told. That is how it is. And when you grow up, you'll have to become a soldier and sacrifice yourself for the emperor. And that is what they all think about.
Male part of the population, this is a brief period of relative safety. Relative, as in there's only so safe you can ever get whilst living on a highly industrialized subterranean hive world where the entirety of the rest of the planet, e.g. anything above ground, is laced with lethal radiation. This, by the way, is pretty much also the only chance they have of escaping a fate in the Death Korps of Krieg. Mind you, most of them don't want to. They have been raised on the ideas of a heroic sacrifice since they were old enough to understand words. Most of them consider the idea of finally being recruited into the Death Korps as an honor, something that they look forward to, something to celebrate when it happens, but if they manage to develop some form of talent or they prove themselves particularly valuable. Let's for example say that you've got a full-on mechanical genius. He has increased the productivity of his workstation by several 100%. He is just incredible at his job. In that case, his overlord might decide that it would be better for the wider war effort for him to remain on Krieg, but these are very, very much so the exceptions rather than the rule. And then, of course, comes the actual training for the Death Korps. If you've been paying even the slightest amount of attention, you will probably have gathered by now that Krieg is not exactly a nice place to grow up. You wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, you've got maybe half an hour to chow down some absolutely terrible breakfast, probably consisting of some form of regurgitated, reconstituted, and recycled waste material. After which, it's off to work, which almost invariably takes place in some form of massive industrialized factory complex that never ceases operation. You've got a 12-hour shift, and some sad-ass motherfucker has the 12-hour shift after you. Unless you are fortunate enough to be some form of administratum or departmentum munitorum clerk, your job is likely to be noisy, filthy, dangerous, and exhausting. Furthermore, you are fed just enough to maintain maximum productivity and make sure that you don't die, at the very least, not from starvation.
I mean, damn, that whole thing sounds, I don't know, sometimes I wonder that, I like in this kind of fantasy setting, you make up shit like that, but how much a person can survive in that kind of condition? I mean, our brains are equipped in a certain way that they require certain things. That is why depression and clinical depressions exist in the first place. So if you're living in that kind of condition where you're just fed just the right amount that raises your productivity and you just basically slave away 24/7 and that is all you do without doing anything, can your mind survive that kind of thing? Because let's be honest, we need entertainment. We need something. I know there have been cases in our world, basically, in certain time, like, in basically World War times, in Stalin times, and lots of times where people were living in that kind of condition. But they were really surviving, or they lost here. I mean, after all that, was there anything left in that? I don't know. I feel like a person cannot survive like that, or at least, first of all, we don't know what consciousness is, so it's hard to say, but I think, some part of us literally die if we live in that kind of conditions, and whatever person after that comes out is definitely not the same one, because, that's just way fucked up scenario. Right, people, that's it for now. Death Korps of Krieg. I'm liking this so far. This is, I guess, one of the most complex story I've seen from Warhammer so far. Just this Krieg story, I love that. I love how Warhammer is so vast. In that, of all the faction, one faction which is Imperium, and even in that, there is literally just one planet which is story is this intriguing. I love that. And the Fallout type of feeling, right, where mass nuclear winter and how people are bred after that is just awesome. All right. If you like my reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe. Like I said, check out the Twitter account. It's in the cards in the description. Check out that account and follow me there. I'll be tweeting every time I upload a reaction video, so you could see which one you like and click on that, I guess, because YouTube only sends 3 notifications per day, and even not that sometimes. I don't know, it's just because sometimes I realize that I make videos like this, longer videos about Warhammer, which people really want to see my reaction. And I also make some other videos too, or comedy videos here and there, and the total of 6, 7, 8 videos a day. And I want certain videos like this to have notifications sent out, but that's not how YouTube works. YouTube send out notification of the videos that don't do much well, and it's not, I guess, not good. I'm just doing experiment by reacting to that. And the videos that I think are one of the main videos that I want to react to, YouTube doesn't send notifications on those. So, it's a problem that way. So I don't know. Check out the Twitter, account and follow there. And, like I said, check out the end cards, check out the cards, I guess, and I'll see you next time.